So, of course, not good news when you're looking at this forecast for a 70% drop in headline earnings per share. To what extent is this sector-specific or company-specific news, and to what extent is it just a reflection of what's taken place in Europe this year?
Good afternoon, Samantha. It seems to be fairly specific to Datatec. You know, they're specifically talking about the impact of Hurricane Sandy and on their subsidiary Westcon, which is their biggest subsidiary by revenue, big distribution business with a lot of business on the U.S. East Coast. They've also said that they've experienced lower than expected federal government business in the U.S. So it seems to be quite centered on the U.S. market. And I see the share price for sort of mid-afternoon today was trading down about 3%. But I think we must remember that the share price has done very well over the last year and is in fact trading up by about 38% year on year.
Yeah, it's interesting, you know, just looking at, I suppose, the Nasdaq was the top performer in the US market last year. And it seems to be that there's been a lot of optimism around tech stocks there. But what are your thoughts right now on tech stocks here in South Africa? We have seen a strong rally in the likes of Pinnacle, EOH, you point out Datatec. Your thoughts on where to get exposure into 2013 in this space?
Well, it's difficult, and I think it really does need to be taken on a company-by-company basis, especially since we've seen some very strong run-ups in the last year. You mentioned those three companies in particular. Pinnacle continues to be an amazing success story. They really have produced incredible returns. If you bought that share 10 years ago, you would be smiling now. And I see that over the last 12 months, Pinnacle's up by another 68%, which is an incredible performance over a 12-month period. EOH continues to perform well. It's another one of those shares that really has performed incredibly well over a long period of time. That's up another 43% this year, or over the last 12 months rather. And as I mentioned, Datatec up almost 40% year on year. There have been some exceptions to this rule, of course. We have seen some local IT stocks not doing well at all. Business Connection, for example, is off about 8 or 9% over the last year, so not great returns if you'd invested in that particular company. And then the real disaster, I think, amongst the larger of the IT companies on the stock exchange has been the performance of Kajima, which is down by 2/3 year on year. So if you're an investor there, you certainly won't be smiling.
Let's go back to Datatec and some of the acquisitions it's making to diversify its geographic presence away from Europe and North America. It bought its subsidiary Logicalis, buying a company called Cybercall, its operations in Latin America, so exposure to that growth market. And then, of course, we also had the announcement that it's buying Comstex, which is a PC distributor, getting exposure to Africa. What do you make of the acquisitions and the potential that it will get from tapping into growth in those regions?
Well, certainly Jens Montanano, who's the group CEO of Datatec, has never been shy of acquisitive growth, and they continue to make many acquisitions every year, varying in scale quite largely. You know, the group has done very well in the Latin American market, especially in the Brazilian market. So I think they're really bolstering their presence down there. And the Comstex acquisition is an interesting one. They're paying 88 million rand for the business. It's a distribution business that is currently partly held, I think, around 40% of its equities in another JSE-listed company, Mustec's hands. They're paying 88 million rand for that business, but it's a big company, especially if you look at it by turnover. Their revenues are over R1 billion a year, and they operate in a range of markets across Africa. So it's really going to bolster their Westcon distribution business in the African context, where perhaps they haven't been as big as in some of the other markets, the developed markets in which they operate.